Right. Going on now to address the two-witness rule. Mr. O'Brien, you're aware, of course, that the Royal Commission found that the application of the two-witness rule in cases involving child sexual abuse is wrong. You're aware of that finding?
Yes, I'm aware of the finding.
And the recommendation that the Jehovah's Witness organisation should revise and modify its application of the two-witness rule, at least in cases involving complaints of child sexual abuse. You're aware of that recommendation?
Yes, I'm aware.
And I take it that that finding and that recommendation were the subject of the discussions you referred to earlier in the organisation with regard to its response to the Royal Commission.
Yes, so we considered the implications of that finding.
And your response is to say that the two-witness rule is required by the Scriptures and can't be changed or avoided. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's our stand.
And Your Honour, I'm not sure what Your Honour's intention was.
How much longer would you be?
Well, I'll take us till 1 o'clock, Your Honour.
Well, we better take the morning adjournment then. We'll take that adjournment now.
Please be seated.
Mr. O'Brien, or indeed Mr. Spinks, if you wish to answer. I'm just dealing with the two-witness rule, you'll recall, and I'd like to take you to your response document, Mr. O'Brien, at tab 1, page 14, paragraph 7.4. And where you set out, you say, moreover, it should be noted that sufficient scriptural evidence to establish a serious sin may consist of two or more witnesses to the same sin, or two or more witnesses to the same type of sin committed on different occasions. So the rule, leaving in the absence of a confession, requires corroboration of an allegation. Is that right?
That's correct scripturally.
Yes, and a particular type of corroboration being another witness, or, as it's put here, another witness to a different occasion of a similar type of sin. Is that right?
That's how I understand it, yes.
And then you go on and you say, on this basis, the scriptural rule of evidence as applied by Jehovah's Witnesses is already in harmony with the model bill, evidence, tendency, and coincidence model provisions by admitting tendency or coincidence evidence when establishing sin in their ecclesiastical proceedings. Now, leaving aside the admission of evidence, let's just deal with this question of corroboration. You're aware, I take it, that the criminal courts do not require corroboration of child sexual abuse, or indeed the most heinous of sins.
Yes, I'm not clear on that particular point.
I'll ask you to accept
but I'll take your word for it.
Section 164 of the Evidence Act abolished the corroboration rule. So it's just misleading to say that this scriptural rule of two-witness rule is in harmony with the law of evidence. It's not in any way, is it?
I would defer to your knowledge of the law on that.
Mr. Jeffrey Jackson of the governing body gave evidence in case study 29, suggesting that there may be a role for circumstantial or corroborating evidence, such as the evident trauma suffered by a victim, in determining the truth of an allegation. For those who are following, that's at transcript 15973, starting at line 37. Now, subsequent to case study 29, the rule has not been modified so as to allow circumstantial or corroborating evidence such as evident trauma suffered by a victim. Was that nevertheless considered?
I'm sure Mr. Jackson would have taken that back to for consideration in the United States, but I'm not aware of discussions on the particular point.
So we too deduce, I take it, that he was wrong in saying that there may be a role for such evidence, that it turned out there isn't a role for such evidence. Was that right?
I couldn't answer that on behalf of Mr. Jackson, sorry.
Now, if you go to the service desk guidelines at tab 6, paragraph 8. You'll see there it says there, for an accusation of serious wrongdoing to be established from a scriptural standpoint, there must be sufficient scriptural evidence, either a confession or testimony from two credible witnesses. Now, you'll accept, of course, that what's not included in the statement of the rule there is the additional component to it, which you speak to, which is admissibility of another witness to a separate incident of the same type of wrongdoing.
So, but that would be understood, that our policy on two witnesses.
So one has a statement here to guide the service desk, but it doesn't state the second component to the rule.
If I could, Mr. Stewart.
Yes, Mr. Spinks.
Without looking it up there, but paragraph 8 references KS 10, which is the Elder Shepherding Manual, and those paragraphs referred to there specifically state those points, so confession.
Well, yes, I'm aware of that, but so it's there, but one has to go to another document to find it. Is that your point?
I think if I could, by way of example, again, it's about audience, Mr. Stewart, the service desks know that KS 10 well, so we understand that somebody else looking in would say that's the case, but if I could, by way of example, I've done my best to read almost every issue paper and report from the Royal Commission, and hundreds of hours of wading through, and there's invariably a executive summary. Now, I'm not using this as a direct parallel, but this is simply an outline, an overview. The extracts of all those publications are not put in there, but that reference, could I refer to it in the KS10?
Yes, well, I've got it here. It's at tab 9, Ringtail 75 at the foot of the page. It states what we've just spoken about. If there are 2 or 3 witnesses to the same kind of wrongdoing, but each one is witness to a separate incident, the elders can consider their testimony. That's what you're referring to?
Correct.
Yes. Well, where you refer to this in your joint statement, let me take you to that, tab 2, paragraph 26. So that's on page Ringtail 7. Paragraph 26, the second sentence, however, in the absence of a confession of more than one witness, a single incident, the scriptural rule of evidence establishes and allows the admissibility of another witness to a separate instance of the same wrongdoing. And you see you have footnote 15 there, and it references 3 different documents. Do you see that?
Yes.
And the third of those documents, which is the one which has Ringtail WAT 0001 004 0068 at paragraph 11. I beg your pardon. The middle of those documents is the KS10, the Shepherd book.
Correct.
Correct. At the paragraph we were looking at a minute ago, paragraph
Correct.
37. Yes. But the first of those documents is a 1991 document. Pay attention to yourselves and all the flock. Is that right?
But I have no reason to doubt that. I haven't got that.
And the 1991 document is of the nature of a document that goes to all the congregations, all the congregants. Is that right?
I'd need to see the document. I have no reason to question what you're saying.
You'll
But I'm
be
not
familiar with the document. It's the 1991. Pay attention to yourselves and all the flock.
I am familiar with that publication.
So is that for elders or for congregants?
For elders.
For elders, right. And the current elders document is the Shepherd document 2010, not so?
Correct.
So the 1991 document you reference is an out-of-date document?
That was superseded. The Shepherd manual superseded. That was a previous version.
Yes. So in January, I beg your pardon, February the 24th, when you sign the statement, you give an old superseded reference.
followed by the current reference, and I believe the purpose at the time was to show a consistent process there. I think if you put the two together, you'll find it similar, but I don't have it in front of me.
And the third reference you give is the 1 October 2012 letter, which was replaced by the 1 August 2016 letter.
Correct.
And the August 2016 letter doesn't state this rule in this fashion. You see, Mr. Spinks, we're back to where we were in case study 29, of really struggling with just what the position is, because there's so many different conflicting documents, and we're given documents which have been superseded as authority for what's said to be current policy.
Well, Mr. Stewart, that's just incorrect.
Well, please
Let me take you
explain
back to paragraph 8 again, if I could.
Paragraph 8 of what?
Of the guidelines for service desks.
Yes. That's tab 6.
Current guidelines, current reference, KS 10, Chapter 5 is the shepherding textbook. I take your point that when you're reading a statement, we've provided historical background, but I recall in the preparation of that was to overcome what we thought would be an obvious objection that that's not always been the case. But the latest reference is in the footnote there, and it certainly is in the paragraph 8 of the service desk guidelines. Now, if the suggestion is that every one of those extracts should be pasted into the document, we'd be happy to consider that. But again, we're extremely familiar with that source material, and it's there in the current letter.
Well, the suggestion is that you reference out-of-date and superseded policies in support of your statement as to what the current policy is.
Mr. Stewart, again, with respect, I've just very clearly explained that the reason for that, the current policy is there, and to address what we felt would have been an obvious objection from the Commission that hadn't previously been our policy. So that's simply a footnote reference to show the existence of the policy.